All right, everybody, welcome to another edition of 10-Minute Misconduct, where we talk about all of the happenings in Leafs land, their past games, their upcoming games, any talking points that are going on with the team at the moment. So here we go. First thing we want to discuss is Jack Campbell's play of late. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk throughout the year of he's played excellent. He's been a Vezina candidate up to this point. He has an all-star game selection. However, in his last 4 starts, he's allowed 21 goals, and he's had a little bit of regression, which was probably going to happen. But we sent out a poll on our Instagram of what's your general level of concern on Jack Campbell's play of late. And it seemed like most people were in the middle, where they're not concerned and they're not too concerned. So I'm going to ask you guys, put it to you guys, how do you feel about Jack Campbell's play of late, and are you really concerned about it?
The concern on a scale of 0 to 10 has been 6 for me. I felt like that for a while, only because he's never played this many games before, right? And that does take a toll on the body and the mind. And you can even tell at the end of the games where he's doing these interviews, he's very hard on himself. It's like the goals that the Rangers scored on him, he had no chance. Like, we're talking empty netters. He's like, I got to be better. Yeah, that's fair, Jack. But the team's got to be better around you. So that's the one thing I'm a little concerned with. The second thing is, I think the best thing that could have happened this week was the Mrazek game. Regardless of who they were playing, he was good. And that gives them a sense of saying, hey, you know what? That's why we brought this guy in. The whole idea was supposed to be a 1A, 1B. Unfortunately, injuries, do happen. But at the end of the day, we got to keep things into perspective here. The Leafs have 2 goalies who've been known both to be injury prone. And I said it before, and I'll say it again. There's a good chance that they're probably not just rely on those 2. Eric Kallgren, Joseph Wall, they're probably going to get some games in as well. So this is more of a wake-up call for the team, because usually they will play different in front of a starter than they do in a backup. You're going to have to get used to playing who's ever in the back, because there's a good chance it won't be those 2. Could be a guy on the injured reserve. And, like I said, you could have one of the young guys in there. So they got to shape up on the defensive side. So, yeah, the concern is getting there for me, Joe.
Bobby?
So, me and Frank went live during the Ranger game, and I agree with Frank where he didn't really have any chance. But the one thing I think that separates a really good goalie from an elite goalie is sometimes you just need to make a save. Now, Jack Campbell didn't really have much of a chance on any of the 4, but the one thing that I think both point out with Shesterkin was, I think he would have had 2 breakaways that he kind of made saves on that you're not really that you're not supposed to. He let those in, all of a sudden you go, well, it was a breakaway, you're not supposed to let it in. Or sorry, it's a breakaway, you can kind of blame it on somebody else. He made saves that he didn't have to. Jack Campbell was good that game, even though he gave up 4 goals. I mean, the goals were really tough. So, yeah, I mean, his numbers are good. I still think he's a good goalie. I think he needs – I agree with Frank where I think fatigue's going to kind of – if you're not used to playing that many games, but at some point you also kind of want to see him make that one save where you're like, oh, you shouldn't have made that, but you did. I think he did against Colorado – against Taves on the power play when he made that dive, and it's like, wow, that's an amazing save. Now, Colorado still is fantastic, so they came back and won. But those are the saves that it's like you're not supposed to make. You make them, even though you didn't have much of a chance. So,
and Rob, what's the old adage? You make a save at one end, there's a good chance you're going to score a goal coming back. Yeah, and the Rangers did it, right?
Right. Yep.
He has made those saves throughout the year, and that's why he's been so good.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the issue is fatigue. I mean, they had 3 weeks off. The issue, I think, is since that time of being off, he's kind of had a little difficulty finding his game, because it's from that point that they've restarted where he struggled. And that has coincided with the fall of their defensive play. They're giving up way too many chances in the defensive zone, too many defensive breakdowns, especially that Ranger game. There was just terrible defensive effort by them. So if I'm rating it at 10, my concern is at like a 3. And Frank, you make a good point. It's partly that low because I know that they have a solid backup in place that if he is struggling for a couple weeks, that we have a guy that we can put back there that allow Campbell to just maybe watch, work on his game in practice, and I'm confident he's going to get it back.
Yep.
And speaking of that defensive play, let's talk about that because the main talking point is that everyone kind of sees that what the Leafs are missing and what Kyle Dubas should acquire is some help on the defensive end. We really liked Sandin and Liljegren this year, but when forced to play minutes that they're not used to playing, in that second pairing role, they haven't exactly, what's the word I'm looking for?
Risen to the occasion.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe they're just not ready for that yet. But two very good defensemen that I think we're all high on.
Yeah, I think, it's funny. We're sitting here 2 weeks ago, and I'll be the first one to admit it. What Justin Hall is doing in that lineup, what Jake Muzzin's doing in that lineup. Obviously, they've had horrible starts to the year this year. But now we sit here 2 weeks later, and I think it's fair to say that those two guys that we're saying, what the hell happened, are big pieces that we're missing in the last couple of games. Hall out with the COVID, Muzzin out now with the concussion. And now you're asking your third pairing to move up into the second pairing where they were probably playing sheltered minutes, right? And only being out there in certain situations, usually not defensive setups or usually not penalty killing. And you're asking them to play in that top four role. Doesn't mean they're not going to get there eventually. We talk about Liljegren. Liljegren's still only 21 years old, right? I don't know what we're expecting, but so far with that, with him and Sandin on the playing the 20-minute role, hasn't really gone that way, which is scary because if we're relying on Jake Muzzin and Justin Hall to play that second pairing, that's still not good enough. The ideal thing is to find that one more defenseman who slots in to that Justin Hall position, bumping guys back down. So you have Sandy. I don't mind Hall on the third pairing, but that's such a glaring hole. And if you have to rely on those two guys, that's going to get very scary for me. So I think Dubas understands that. I think there will be an acquisition at some point, but that just goes to show you the state of the defense right now. And so last thing for me, when is it going to be enough when we're not when the Leafs are not calling up guys like Dahlstrom and Biega? When do you start looking at what you have in your pipeline? Philip Kral just won the AHL player of the month, not defenseman of the month, player of the month, and he doesn't get a call up. Mac Hollowell, Joseph Duzak, all these guys that were drafted that are developing for the Marlies, but yet you bring up two journeyman defensemen who haven't played in 2 years. I just don't get it. You have to see what you got because with the salary cap, you may have to start relying on those guys in your lineup, pretty soon.
It's a very good point there, Frankie. Very good point. So are you still looking at a guy to acquire like Damon Severson? I'm more high on someone like a Josh Manson. I still think 100%. They need some more bite back there. Yeah. Someone who is just going to ragdoll you if you're standing in front of the net and you spray the goalie or something like that. Someone who's going to make you pay the price and someone who's willing to pay the price, blocking shots, things like that. I think they have enough guys that can move the puck. And not to say that Josh Manson can't do that. I think he still can, but I that's the type of guy that I'd be looking to acquire.
100%, Joe. I'm with you 100%. The only thing I don't like is the fact that you may have to go 2 years of giving your first round pick up to a guy who's going to be a UFA. And
you think you're going to have to give up 2 first rounders for him?
No. What I'm saying is if you're going to have to give up a first, it better be in a package. You even have to give a little bit more for a guy with term because you don't want to get burned 2 years in a row with UFA. What if Mancy gets hurt or, a bust? At least if you're going to put a package together for a guy with term, knowing that you have him for the next year, that's where I would, kind of go a little bit more, but I know what I'm getting in that contract, right? So I'm looking at, I love Manson, I love Severs, I said that before, but hopefully they can find a guy with maybe a year left on his deal. I don't know who that guy is. I'm just saying that's kind of where I'm hoping Dubas goes, like the Jake Muzzin acquisition of a couple of years ago. Did it before the deadline. He had a year or so left on his deal. And the assets made sense at the time.
Would you trade like Liljegren in a package like that to acquire him?
Liljegren in a first?
Yeah.
If it's who, like depends Josh on the guy, right? Sorry?
Josh Manson.
I would not do it for Manson. I do it for Severson because he has a year left on his deal. Yeah, okay. I would, 100%.
I think the one thing I like Jake Muzzin. I think that he's essential to this. I've always liked him. I don't think Justin Hall is going to play on a Stanley Cup winning team or a Stanley Cup contender. I just don't. I think you have to subscribe to either two theories of you better be really high end with like have high end defense and then a couple like, below average guys, or you better be six deep. And I think the way the Leafs are constructed, they need to be six deep because they don't really have that number one guy, that number one, that stud. And there are not too many out there, but
at least Reilly's played like a number one.
Credit to Reilly. And I've never really been a big Reilly guy per se. Joe, remember how many times he got caught in 2-on-1s and stuff last year? Haven't really seen it as much this year, but like credit to him, him and Brody have been playing close to 30 minutes a night, which you really get. That's not really what you want from those guys, but so far so good with those two.
He's not in that. He's not in that Adam Fox.
He's that next tier down, I think. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
Do you trust Morgan Reilly to play big minutes against the top line of another team?
You have no choice, Rob.
Yeah. I know, but what I'm saying is
whether I say yes or no, you have no choice.
I'm saying, do you trust it? Like
the way he's playing this year, yeah, I do trust him more than last year. That's for sure.
I'll tell you why. Yes, because if I look at the makeup of their forward group and how much more they've committed to defense, Matthews, even David Camp from a third line, I feel a little bit more. I have a little more faith in that. If you asked me that last year, not a chance. They didn't have it last year. They didn't commit to the defense that they've shown at least in the first part of the year. Lately, maybe not, but you have to, man. Yeah, you have to. And I think that's more of a credit to Brody than it is Reilly. Brody may have been one of their better signings in years.
Mm-hmm. If you're the Leafs, you're going to have to play two deep pairings because it looks like you're either going to get Tampa, who's going to have 2 solid lines, or you're going to play Florida, who has 2 solid lines. So at some point, you're going to have to upgrade that top 4.
Yes,
in my opinion.
That you're right to the fullest extent. That's why a deal needs to be made to bring in a top 4 defenseman, not a fringe, a solid top 4 defenseman. Because I'll tell you right now, Reilly, Brody, Muzzin, and player A will be those guys that you're running out there 18 to 20 plus minutes.
Right. I also had this theory that I think Florida or Tampa are good matchups for the Leafs. I think the Leafs will struggle more against a grinding team like Columbus, Montreal. I think they'd match up really well against Tampa, and they give Tampa fits in the regular seasons. I think they match up really well against Florida. I think if they play Florida and they can upgrade that defense, I think they're going to win that series. I just don't trust that Florida team. Would you guys?
I don't trust the Leafs either. So
it's very true. I know. I think that if they play a skill team, I think they're in a better position than if they get a team that's going to lock it down. That's going to just say, we're going to just muck up the ice. I think that Florida and Tampa are good matchups for Toronto.
Fair. All right. Lastly, because we're running out of time here. It was announced today at practice that the Leafs were splitting up Matthews, Marner, and Nylander into 3 separate lines. So they had Nylander playing on the third line with Kempf and Kerfoot. They had Marner going down to Tavares' line with Makayev. And then you had Matthews with Bunting and Kasha, which was playing very well before Kasha went out with COVID. What do you think of the move by Keefe?
Listen, very simply, this is not a demotion for anybody here. This is not a demotion for Nylander or Kerfoot. Kerfoot has led the league, the team in most points in the 5-on-5 this year. So like, this is more of a, we're finally healthy. Let me see what I got for 3 lines. Let me put a little bit of offense on 3 lines. You have 3 guys on 3 separate lines who command the puck, who are wizards in terms of puck possession. Now, and you also get now Nylander against third line of other teams and third D pairings. That is the key here that a lot of people don't understand. Like, he's having a career year. Would you not want him playing against weaker opponents? And not just that. This is a credit to Andre Kash. When that guy been put in the top 6 role, he's been thriving. And I tell you right now, this is also Matthews telling Keefe, you know what? I wouldn't mind playing with this guy. And I'll leave you with this, Joe. How do you replace Zach Hyman? Because we always said, it's hard to replace him. You know how you replace Zach Hyman? you put 2 on Matthews' line, Michael Bunting and Andre Kasha. 2 guys who go into the corner, go get the puck, and give it to Matthews. That's how you replace them.
Yeah, very well said. I love the move that they made today. If it doesn't work, then you just shift back to what you know works.
Exactly.
I like that they're trying different things. And like you said, getting Nylander out there against third lines, third pairings, it kind of reminds me of like what Pittsburgh had going with Kessel on the third line, the HBK line.
That's right.
Where that third line basically was a huge component to them winning the cup. So if it could be anything like that, that'd be amazing. The only thing I hesitate for is Keefe has to find a way to keep Nylander's minutes up, because Nylander's been their second best forward.
Yeah.
I don't want his minutes to go down. So that's the only.
I could see him being bumped up in situations with the big guys when needed, and Kasha down to protect leads and stuff. So I don't see that being an issue.
Bobby, from an unbiased perspective, what do you think?
I hate Kasha. He's killed so many years. I'm like, oh, this is the guy. Oh yeah, he's gonna have a great year, and then he gets injured. I hate him. So I can't stand the guy. No comment.
Wow.
You know nothing about the guy other than his name's Kasha.
And that he gets injured every single year, except this year, the one year that I don't really pick him up. But did he miss time?
COVID.
Oh, okay. Well, he was bound to get something.
And on that note,
every year that poor guy is hurt. Like you know how many years I picked him up in Anaheim? Just
it's a strong word, brother.
I know that's true. I don't hate him. Disappointed, like I'm disappointed in him.
All right, everybody. Thanks for listening. Tell us in the comments which defenseman you want the Leafs to acquire, just so we get some good idea what the fans want. Always subscribe, post your comments below, and rip all you want on the big guy down below.